All right, here we go. It took me a minute. Good evening, everybody. Hey, Christine. I know can you hear me? Christy, are you logged in? Unmute.
Can you
Unmute.
hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm
I
on
can
that.
hear you. Hi, I haven't seen you in a minute. Welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry I ghosted you.
That's okay. We're all busy. We have busy lives. I get it. Well, we are going to get started. I'm going to see, and I'm going to introduce our speaker. Don't forget, everybody, this is what month? March. Finances. We are talking finances, and I have a special guest for you guys tonight. So excited to introduce you. We're going to talk about finances, but we're also going to talk about realizing our dreams. And I have somebody with us tonight who has done all of that, who epitomized all of that. So let me, without further ado, I met this young lady. First, tell you how I met, because I always tell you guys the backstory on things, right? So, a good friend of mine who's blacked out right now, Miss Vice, who's not showing herself on camera, is a good friend of mine for years and has been traveling all around the world and is retired before the age of 50. And so I asked her to speak, but she chickened out. I'm going to tell it all, Lisa. And so it's a sweetheart that she is, introduced me to a good friend of hers who is also living the dream life. And that's how we came to being tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to read her bio, and then we're going to get started with this. So let me pull it up. Adalia Aborisade. Now, let me say, I'll make sure I say your name right, your last name. Say it for me so I can say it correctly.
Aborisade.
Oh, Aborisade. Adalia Aborisade, better known as Picky Girl Travels, is a retired educator, world traveler, and financial coach. In 2016, she traded in the American dream for a 60% pay cut and the opportunity to live in Honduras. She went on to live in China and Kuwait before settling in Mexico City. Wishing to validate, motivate, and inspire other women yearning to live their life on their terms, she began hosting the Picky Girl Travels podcast. Since retiring from full time teaching, Adalia has focused her efforts on helping women develop their financial confidence to master their finances so they can live the life they've always dreamed of. And so, without further ado, I am going to introduce you to Italia. Yay!
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. So, I always ask my speakers just to first share your story. Tell us, how did you get to where you are right now?
Uh, I guess the interesting part starts about 6 years ago. I got married when I was 19 years old and stayed married against all common sense for about 20 years. It was not a good relationship. It was not a good situation, which kind of, I guess, gives you a little hint to what kind of childhood trauma I was dragging around if I stuck with somebody who didn't treat me well for 20 years. And when I left that marriage, I kind of was like, okay, I was so happy. I was 39, about to be 40. And I was just, instead of looking at it like, oh my gosh, I've wasted all my good years, blah, blah, blah. I looked at it more as, whew, at least I'm young enough to still do the things I want to do. And that's sort of the way I approached my new life. I was going to no longer tolerate things that didn't serve me, things that didn't make me feel good. I was going to pursue the things that I always wanted to do, regardless of what anybody thought. And one of the first things I did, I went to graduate school. But one of the dreams I had always had was moving abroad. And within a year of getting divorced, my car was about to be paid off, my lease was about to be up, and things were coming together. And I had decided initially to put off trying to move abroad until my youngest was 18. But I said I wasn't going to do things I didn't want to do anymore. And I can remember distinctly sitting at my job being like, I don't want to do this. This is like slowly killing me. And if I have to work at Starbucks, so be it. I'm not doing this anymore. So I was kind of like, well, why should I wait? And so I did ask my 15-year-old to come with me. I was like, hey, this is the plan. I'm going to look for a job in another country. Because anybody who knew me, that should not have been a shock to them that I wanted to live abroad. That should not have been a shock. And I even told her, I was like, I will if there's a specific country you want to live in, I will do my best to try and find a job there. She was like, no, not interested. You go do your thing. And so, you know, I was already a certified teacher. That was the easiest way to go abroad because there are tons of international schools where the language of instruction is English. And, you know, everybody tells you at the time, China and the Middle East was where you should go if you wanted to make lots of money. But the more I thought about it, I really wanted to learn Spanish. I am originally from Houston. Turns out there was a Latin American international school job fair being held in Houston. So nothing but schools in Spanish speaking countries. The job, it kind of fell into my lap. I fell into their lap. It's as if someone had looked at my resume and created a position specifically designed for my skill set and my experience. First school I talked to, they ended up making me an offer. And I'll tell you, nobody moves to Latin America for the money because the wages, that's why Latin America is such an affordable place to live for people in the US and Canada, because wages are very low. But, you know, I had made some financial decisions where it wasn't going to, it hurt, but it wasn't going to like end things that I had to take a 60% pay cut to be there. And so I moved to Honduras, me, the 15-year-old, my dog, and that kind of led me down the path that I'm on now. Things did not work out at that school because they were having some budgetary issues and really could not afford the position they had created and hired me for. And when they chose to restructure and wanted me to do 3 times the work for the same pay, I was in a position to say, no, thank you. And I did not want to return to the United States. So I took a grown-up gap year and moved to Mexico City the first time. And after my youngest, you know, we talked about, okay, so how are we going to fund college? You know, what's our strategy? What's our plan? I was like, okay, fine, I'll go to work. And I did that and ended up in a very ill-advised situation in Kuwait. You know, when you see red flags, you should honor them. You should listen. I ignored them, and it was a complete hot mess. And I was out of Kuwait I got there in October. I was out in December, and a job in China fell into my lap. I did that for 1.5 years. China is the one place on earth I said I absolutely never wanted to live. And it lived up to that. There are lots of people who have great experiences in China. I was not one of them. And December 2019, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with this, and I'm moving back to Mexico, which is what I finally was able to do in July. But so that's kind of my story of how I ended up here, living in Mexico City, and not teaching anymore.
It sounds like this is really remarkable. You went through 2 countries, Kuwait, China. You had to go through some experiences to find where you needed to be. And even that is so scary to some people. Why do you think you was able to step out on areas? You had one bad experience. That would make most people run back to the United States, but you didn't. What was it that made you say, I'm still going to find my happy place?
That's very true, but I knew for a fact my happy place was not in the United States. I could
Okay.
not afford to live the life I wanted, a life that was not centered around work, a life that was, I couldn't afford to live a life where I would work maybe when I felt like it, I would travel when I felt like I couldn't do that in the US. So from the instant I left, and I continue to say this, that if at all possible, I will not return to live in the US. So, but what made it possible for me to kind of just roll with the punches when things did not go to plan was that I had FU money.
FU money, I assume is we're talking about savings.
Yeah, it's a particular kind of savings. Savings tend to be sort of a short-term thing, like I'm saving up for a down payment on a house, I'm saving to buy a car. This is a specific pool of money that I feel gives you the freedom that when folks are not acting right, that man is not acting right, that woman is not acting right, that job is not acting right, that you can be like, all right, F you, I'm out.
So is it more than, well, we're going to get into that a little bit later because you can give me a little bit more idea of how everybody can get to that point where they can, because I'm thinking it's like a 6 months to 8 months savings account, or maybe just living below your means, but it might be a little bit more. I might not even be on the path with what you're talking about there.
No, you're on the path. That, and I guess I don't live life in a place of fear because everything is figure outable.
Okay, I could get with that. That makes sense what you just said.
You just have to, with this whole thing, the whole way that I choose to live my life now, you just kind of have to stay flexible. You have to keep your knees bent because things are not going to always go the way you expect them to.
That's life in general. I think that's really life. And I think that's maybe why people have such a hard time.
Yeah.
When things don't go their way, they lose it.
And my approach is more of, okay, that didn't go the way I want. So what's the next move? How do we handle this? One example of that was when we were living in Honduras, there was a mix up with my daughter's residency. They were going on a school field trip to Costa Rica, and Honduras has very strict child immigration laws because of child trafficking.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And they counted her as a Honduran resident instead of an American resident. As an American, there would have been no issue. But as a Honduran, I needed extra paperwork and all this stuff for her to be able to leave the country. We find this out as they are getting ready to board the flight. So she's finding out that this choir trip she's supposed to go on, she's not going to be able to go on unless we can, get this paperwork handled. And instead of being like, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world, it's more of, okay, so how do we get this paperwork? Who can we talk to? What is that going to cost? So I that's just how, I guess, a lifetime of things not going my way, I guess, has kind of just prepared me for that's my initial reaction when things, go awry.
And that, if they say flexibility and adaptability is the building blocks of resilience. That you have to be flexible and adaptable in order to be resilient. And those are things that we've seen out of COVID. But I get what you're saying. Sometimes I react when things don't happen. I get all tight and intense and over kind of dramatize things. So maybe approaching it from a more, okay, that didn't work, give me more flexible thinking, the way I think will ease me, my mindset, one, and also maybe open up my vision to see other possibilities. Because I think when you fear or you react to a situation, you don't envision what the solution is.
Yeah.
One, and what options you have. Two. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So I think changing our mindset about the things that we expect in life and being flexible and adaptable is one way that we can be able to not only build resilience, but envision other opportunities? Because I guess what you also said is that you kept saying, this fell into my lap, this China thing fell into my lap. And I'm like, okay, so you didn't even plan on those things, but they came to you.
I mean, like when I arrived in Kuwait, my flight landed a little bit after midnight, and it was not clearly communicated if I was expected to go to work that day because school had already started. But I was coming in some weeks afterward because of visa delays. But I was like, I need, because I was also, I think, supposed to be the department chair or whatever. And I was like, okay, I just want to, land on my feet, get the ball rolling. So when they came to pick up the other teachers, I went in that day as well. And as the principal is explaining to me how there are people who work there who are not properly credentialed, and she doesn't even know how they got their job, I'm thinking to myself, it's like 9 o'clock. So I've been in the country less than 10 hours. I was like, this is a mistake. I should leave right now.
Wow.
But for some reason, I decided to give them the benefit of the doubt. And it took a whole 2 weeks when I was like, no, this is not going to work. And I immediately started looking for positions. And China was the only place I refused to apply. I applied, oh my gosh, probably to about 55, 57 schools. And, the universe tends to unfold as it should. So apparently I was supposed to go to China, whether I wanted to or not.
There's a lesson there. There was a lesson there.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. So take me back to the time when you decided, again, you was in a marriage that didn't work out, and you just said, enough is enough. We all go through and stay in situations longer than we should in life, whether it's jobs or relationships, maybe even businesses that we try to hold on to that are not making money. What would you say helped you, and what you would suggest to women who are contemplating a change because they're in a situation that's not beneficial to them? How do they pivot?
I think we have been conditioned to do that, particularly women. There's a meme going around now that says something like, no matter how long you spent making a mistake, you shouldn't be afraid to, like walk away from it or something like that. I will say it took me a little while to get out of like being mad at myself for staying as long as I did. For me, it came down to I realized I was about to lose myself. Like it was to a point where it was going to break me, and I decided to choose myself. After 20 years of choosing everybody but me, bending and trying to accommodate and giving up my dreams and shrinking myself, to not make a wave, that sort of thing. That was the point for me. It really came down to, if I don't choose myself now, I'm going to be lost. And so for women who need to pivot, who need to make a change, I always start with asking questions about, why are you hesitant to do that? Where is that coming from? This, because I know, like for me, it was very much tied to, oh, well, this is what you're supposed to do. And, when I step back and ask, like, where is that coming from? Well, that's because a patriarchal society has conditioned me to believe that that's what I'm supposed to do.
Wow.
It's not really about serving my needs or what's best for my mental health. So I have grown to respect intuition far more than I ever did before, because I believe that's something else we, particularly women, are conditioned to distrust our own intuition.
Wow.
How many times have you found yourself where you're doing something and deep down, you really don't want to do it. You really feel like, but you ignore the voice in your head that's telling you, you don't want to do this. You don't want to be here.
That's me. Oh my God. And I stay because I'm expecting it to change or some altruistic idea. I'm really trying to help the people, but oh God, I'm in a situation like that right now with one of my gigs, and
but it's to your own detriment. And I now try and question my motivation, or when I catch myself ignoring my intuition, or that I try to honor it and be like, okay, so you obviously don't want to do this. Why are you ignoring that? You know, it's not something, that kind of conditioning you can't instantly undo. It's a continual thing.
No, you're right. And I know it is messages that subliminally that they may be from society has told us that we're supposed to be sacrificing all the time. I'm big on that, right, Christina, about self-care. And the reason we have to be self-care, if you have to really think about it in a macro, is because we're constantly sacrificing. So the self-care is the bandage, the healing process from all the self-sacrificing that women do. That's crazy, because you never hear men talk about self-care.
Oh.
Even though I just got my son doing it, he comes up with a facial mask and talking about, I'm doing self-care today. But men don't talk about self-care. Women talk about self-care. And that's a good point, that because we were self-sacrificing, we have to do self-care, otherwise we lose our mind.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Chris.
So when we're talking about this, the thing that keeps running through my head is that I have 2 special needs children. And I haven't put myself first in 21 years because I feel, they need me. And of course they need me, and they're going to need me well into adult life. I guess I don't know if I can do it. Do you know what I mean? I can maybe find a happy medium, but I'm always going to have to be there do you know what I'm saying? Be there for them. And that's what God's chosen. I mean, that's what I feel that's my, he's put me here, and that's my charge for that. But I don't know how and then I have parents with my mom has Alzheimer's right now, so I'm going through that too. So I'm going through a season of life that's kind of trying to put myself first is not in the.
It's not easy for you.
Yeah, I just don't see. I mean, I would love to get up and run away to Italy.
Would you? Is that where, if you had to go anywhere in the world, is that where you would go? Everywhere in the whole world?
That's my dream for 30 years. I've never been out of the U.S. myself. And that's my dream, to go to Italy. And we were going to go when the Trinity was going, the choir was going a few years back. I put $1,000 down, thought I was going. And then we had to take that money and we had to pay for a professional advocate to help my youngest son through school and get him into the right school. And that's kind of been my experience, has been, it just doesn't seem to work out. I don't know. It's, do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do. Adalia, I mean, because you're in a situation where you're a sandwich, they call it sandwich generation.
Yeah.
So you have,
that's exactly what that is.
Adalia was different. She was a single mom, but she didn't have parents to take. So Adalia, what do you say for people where it's not realistically right now, to be able to travel or even live abroad right now? What can they still do to still keep that dream alive?
I think if it's not that dream, it needs to be there. You cannot, because I grew up, both of my brothers both had developmental issues. Like I said, I'm carrying a whole lot of childhood trauma. So no, that was my mother's situation. And she died she had a stroke when she was 57.
Oh, geez, that's just my age.
She was too young. She was too young to have a stroke, but part of it was because she did not, you can't continue to sacrifice yourself completely because you have to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So it may not be that you can go to Italy, but maybe there is some other right now, but maybe there is something else that you dream about or you want to do that you've put on the back burner that might be more doable given your responsibilities. But and that was another thing in my head because, you know, I was raised in that household and I saw what that did. So
Yeah.
you have to, step back and really, I made a list of what did the life I wanted to live, what did it look like, what kind of stuff did I do, and even if I had not moved abroad, I knew that I wanted more, I guess, joy in life.
Yeah.
Life had become very much drudgery for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, is this all I get?
No.
And that can't be it.
Yeah.
So, I've pursued other things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Moving outside the United States, that's the thing that gets the all of the attention, but
Mm-hmm.
it was much more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I get it. Christine does have, she wants to, she's an artist by natural ability, and she's very good. And one of her dreams, and
I opened an Etsy shop.
Yay!
Yes, she has an online business.
I just opened.
Congratulations! No wonder you were posting me.
Awesome.
I've had 6 wholesale.
Yes, listen, that's what we're talking about. So, one of the questions, the ladies in the Facebook group, everybody's not logging into Zoom. They're on Facebook Live. She said, can you, what did she say now? Let me go back to it. Suggestions for getting to a point to be able to up and go. What first steps do you recommend?
Consumer debt is a bit of an albatross. Now, I am not talking about student loans, but I'm talking about like credit cards, car note, that sort of thing, because you can still go and have those things. But the problem is, if you're like me and you were really trying to work the least amount that you could, because I was going to say work-life balance. I really didn't want any work. I just wanted the life. If you have those things, you're going to have to fret more about work because you have to pay those things. So eliminating as much consumer debt as you possibly can. And again, I'm not talking about student loans. There's no need to pay off student loans if you're trying to leave the United States. That is not necessary. But getting rid of consumer debt would be number one, and then increasing your savings rate would be number two.
Okay.
Because I was a public school teacher, and like the circles I'm in now, I'm seeing the money normal people make, and I knew I was underpaid. I had no idea I was really making peanuts in ice water. So
Ice water.
That's what my mama used to say. But it's accurate. Oh, it's so accurate. So I see these people who make way more money than I did, but I had a very high savings rate. So that kind of helped me get to where I am now.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I know people who are public school teachers who, of course, we know that the United States doesn't value education because they would pay teachers much more, but they were good savers. So I know people who make lots of money and have lots of debt. And I know people who make no money really, but they have no debt, and it balances out, because at the end of the day, when you make a lot of money, people like to spend a lot of that money versus those who don't. So it can balance out. So I agree with you. Lowering the debt is really, and that's where the freedom comes in. And I can agree with you on that, because and Lisa knows this. I've quit so many jobs over the years. Since Lisa met me 10 years ago, I would stay at a job for 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, this is not for me. I'm going. And the reason I was able to do that is because I never lived paycheck to paycheck. I never, I never had to worry about, oh, where am I going to get my, next pay if I leave this job? I was like, peace out, I'm gone, because I always had low debt, and
Yeah.
I always had, because I had low debt, that just enabled me, and I'll be okay until something else comes up. So I definitely agree with that. Somebody says, what do you consider to be a high savings rate? Anne-Marie.
Anything over 20%. I mean, at one point, and I could not do this when I was married because, oh boy, he was a low key hoarder, shopaholic. Because it's very interesting that he swore that I stole money from him during the marriage, because how else could I live the life I live now? But he was struggling. And I just thought, well, last time I went by your house, there was a garage full of Amazon boxes, that makes the difference. So like 20% in some way, shape, or form through savings and investments is kind of considered like the norm. So anything above that, I aimed to be at 50%, but that's not always doable. When I was working in China, I was somewhere north of 75%, maybe as high as 90, especially once the pandemic started.
So when you say percentage rate of savings, was that based off your salary?
Yes.
I'm kind of confused.
Of the money that you bring in, you should be saving and or investing.
Oh, okay.
20% is like that's the number you should just aim for. Now, a high savings rate is going to be something in excess of that.
Yeah, and it depends on everybody. Like it depends on your debt and your other responsibilities.
Yeah, I agree with that too, because as you know, I retired when I was 45, but I made good income. However, I saved between 65 and 75% of what I made, and I was able, like I said, I started my whole retirement plan late in life. I probably worked it out within 8 years, and in that 8-year period of time, I was able to pay off a mortgage. I was able to get rid of all of my debt. Basically, everything outside of my basic spending expenses, everything else went to savings, investments, IRAs. It went to some sort of saving scheme, and it works. You have to really become frugal. And like I said, people clown me, people joked at me because I didn't spend money. Yes, you were one of them. Yes, you were. I mean, I was like, people asked me to go somewhere, and I had to sit there and think, like, is this really gas worthy? I mean, am I going to get the value of my gas by going to such and such location?
It changes your priorities.
But here I am now, capable of sitting at home, choosing whether or not I want to go out and find a job, because I'm still fairly young. But I have the freedom to make that decision now, and I could not have done that if I continue to just spend my money because I had extra money.
Yeah, and so the lady in black is talking. That's my friend Lisa. So the joke would be, and when I say she was frugal, and I'm frugal. Anybody who knows me, I'm frugal by nature. But Lisa took it to another level. So she would park her car. If she didn't have to go anywhere, like work, she wouldn't take her car. She wouldn't go anywhere at all. I'm not going anywhere because that costs gas money. So she was right. From the time I met her, I didn't know it until she retired. 3 years before she retired, that she was saving all of her money, and 8 years she had a plan to retire before she turned 50, and she did. And not only did she retire, she traveled around she went to how many countries did you visit that year?
In total, I've been to 42, but last year after retiring, I went to I spent 7 months in Europe, Africa, and South the Middle East. I went to 13 countries.
13 countries in a year.
Yeah, well, in 7 months, yeah.
7 months. 13 countries. So she not only retired, she traveled, and that's how she met this beautiful, beautiful spirit.
Yeah, we met in Mexico back in 2018.
Yeah, when I was on my grown-up gap year.
That's when we met. Yes.
Okay. So ladies, it's possible. Now, the last speaker said, live off of 30% of your salary and invest 70%, which is like what Lisa was talking about. So they said 70-30 rule. Live off 30% of your income and invest and save 70% of it. And it's doable, but it's about shifting priorities.
And it's also shifting a mindset. I forget how many years ago I heard Paula Pant talk, because I'm not good at budgeting. Like I can create a budget, but like having to think about like, oh, I should only be spending so much money on this and that. That's paperwork and that's math and that's not my jam. She talked about the anti-budget, where basically you flip it around. Instead of let me pay my bills and save what's left, you take the savings off the top and you live off of what's left. So once I decided I wanted to save, let's say 50% of my income, I looked at the numbers and I was like, okay, that means this amount comes off. This is what I have left. Does that meet my bills? If not, I then had to adjust those bills and maybe find a cheaper solution for cell phone, maybe give up cable or whatever. Okay. But that thing right there, that shift in mindset, and we hear people say it all the time, pay yourself first.
Yeah.
But it's something about like when I would get paid, I'd immediately take off the top what I had to save or invest. And then I don't have to think about budgeting per se with the money that's left. Because hey, when it's gone, it's gone, and I can't go out to eat or to the concert or whatever. Or if that's a priority, I make sure I take that out before I, go to McDonald's or what have you. But making that shift for me was a game changer.
I see it too. I do say it, and I don't do it like that. But you had a good point. So have a goal in mind. Let's say you want to save so much money by the end of the year. Let's make it simple. Let's use our SMART goal. Because guys, I taught you guys this. So if you want to save, let's say $10,000 for the year, you break that up into 12 months. And that would be like, what is that? 10, 12, somebody help me. 12 to 10,000.
Ooh, don't make me do math in my head. 12. I was a social studies teacher.
What is 10,000 divided by 12? Somebody help me out with that.
Like $500 a month?
No. How much? I don't have my calculator in front of me.
$466? I don't know. I'm guessing.
Okay, so let's just say it's $500 a month. There's got to be more than that. If I'm trying to save 10,000 for the year,
5 times 10 would be 5,000.
Okay, I got it. My calculator.
It's 8 and change.
It's 8 and change. Okay, so let's say you want to save $800 a month. You bring home. You got to take that $800 immediately off of your income. Like,
or if I get paid twice a week, I'm taking $400 off of. Twice a month, $400 off of each check.
And that's how you meet that $10,000. Yes. That's your $800 a month. So immediately take that, and whatever's left over,
I make it work.
You got to make it work. Doesn't matter what it is. As long as you pay your bills, that means you can't get your nails done. That means you can't get your hair weave done. Can't put your eyelashes in. Can't go get DoorDash food. You can't,
or you get the DoorDash, but you give up the nails. You got
to whatever it is.
You got to make choices.
You got to make choices, or you can bring in more income.
Yes.
So there's options.
It's either you cut spending or you reduce income. You increase income.
Yeah. It's one of the two. So that's how you do it to make it simple for you guys. Thank you. That gave me y'all late. $833 a month. Y'all late. Thank you though. So it's possible to save $10,000 for the year. You have to save $833 a month. And if you're bringing in at least $2,000, $3,000 a month, it's possible. Now, somebody said it's harder to do what you did, Adalia, with children. Now, in all fairness, I have to say Lisa Weiss has no children. So and I thought about that too, but I might have to disagree with that. And you tell us why, Adalia, because you had a child. You were a mom.
I still have one at home. And she and I had some conversations, especially when I moved to Honduras and I was making 60% less than I was before, but I still managed to save 50% of what I made there. And so, we talked about like, this is the amount I have to buy groceries. So, as you're saying, you want to do this and that, I still gave her an allowance, but it was it wasn't a lot of money, but she had a little money in her pocket. So when she went to hang out with her friends, so she had to learn budgeting lessons right along with me. You know, I think it's important to bring kids into those conversations
Absolutely.
because that keeps them from becoming adults who have no concept of personal finance at
Absolutely.
all.
Absolutely.
So it can be done. But I had a dialogue with her so that she knew it wasn't just, oh, mama doesn't want to give me any money. It was like, no, this is the goal. You want to be able to go to college. I don't think your dad's going to put anything in on this. So this is what we're going to have to do to make that happen. You know, you want to go on the choir trip to Costa Rica. Well, this is how I'm making that happen.
And so since she's lived abroad with you, how has she thrived compared to when she lived in the United States?
You know, I sold it to her because she was not interested at all.
I'm surprised. Yes, let's go on a big
If it had been me, oh my gosh, but no. She was like, I'm not interested. And you know, honestly, I think she and her dad had a falling out. And then she came back to me and she was like, hey, is that offer still on table? And by this time, I had already accepted a job in Honduras. Had I known she was coming with me, I probably would have held out for a job that paid a little bit more to make things easier. And I sold it to her as, think of it as a study abroad. You can do it for a year. She was going to be a sophomore. I was like, you know, it was a school that used American curriculum. So she was earning credits for graduation and that sort of thing. And really, she had such a fabulous time. And not that Tegucigalpa, Honduras is, you know, a destination for anyone. Usually it's more people leaving than trying to go. However, she had such a good time. She really struggled with whether or not to stay or to go back to the United States, but she happened to be in FFA, Future Farmers of America, and wanted to raise a pig. And there was no way we could do that there. So she had already decided she was coming back to the States before I had decided not to go along with their restructuring. But because she already had an interest in agriculture and because she was exposed to kids who had lived all over the world. And, you know, like her best friend there, the dad worked for USAID, and my child was already interested in agriculture. And so she got really interested in bringing sustainable agricultural practices to different countries around the world, which is why she's now at Sul Ross University majoring in agriculture. So it very much opened her eyes up. She does not think there is anything she cannot do. Like at 16, she was like, oh, well, I flew to Costa Rica by myself. Like, she could do anything. So it was incredibly beneficial for her. And she only stayed abroad a year.
Okay. And so that's what I hear too, when children, and I think about our former president, Barack Obama, who had such a wealth of international experience by the time he came to college. It gives, I hear, and I see it when President Obama talks about it all the time. Had he not been born in Hawaii, lived in Indonesia, and had these experiences from people all over the world, it formulated his leadership ability. He saw things from a different perspective. And I think that is a big part of Americans who don't leave the country, always see stuff was on the news. You don't know, you have no idea what it's like. We're so limited unless you come from another country as a, you know, immigrant or, you know, generational. You have no concept of what the world is like. And because of that, we limit ourselves. We really do. And I'm not talking about our little excursions to the Caribbean every now and then. I'm talking about what you and Lisa have experienced. I'm a tourist. I admit it. I've been to tourism stuff. I've not yet went out on a missions trip or any of that stuff, but that's one of the things I do want to do. And I always encourage my children to travel. My daughter's a nester though. My son though, he's ready to go. You see the Eiffel Tower behind me. So we went to Paris and London a couple of years ago, and it opened his mind up. It's like he became a different person. And I have a nephew who studied abroad in Spain, and it changed his whole perspective. So I encourage all of us who have children to encourage your children to travel, even if you don't travel, and it's fine. Some people have fears around that, but don't limit don't pass your fears onto your children. That's all I want to say. I said all that to say that.
I was also just thinking about living outside the United States. If you, the life you want probably costs less. So a lot of people who find themselves responsible for aging parents in Mexico, a whole industry has developed where boomers have started moving there, and there are nursing facilities starting to open because it's much cheaper to pay for care in Mexico than it is in the United States.
And medication. I know people,
Yes.
and I'm going to say this, it's not political, but it's true. I know people who go to Mexico to get their medications because it's cheaper. They go to Mexico, but yet people have a problem for Mexicans coming here, but yet you go to their country and get medication. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's not political. It's just an observation. So yes, their healthcare, their pharmaceuticals is much cheaper down in Mexico.
But in one of the, I know someone she's teaching in the Middle East, and she took her mother with her because the quality of care she could get there and the cost of it, she just couldn't get that in the United States. So, it's not just people like me whose children are grown and, off doing their own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's socialized medicine in Canada and Europe where you don't have to deal with the things. Everybody gets, I think you get months off from you have a baby. They give you automatic long-term prenatal, whatever it's called, after you have a baby. It's been so long. I forgot. Maternity care. That's right. Oh my God. Any other questions you had? I'm so I'm intrigued with all of this. So tell us about how do you coach people financial health and financial coaching?
I am not a financial advisor. My philosophy is that with the right education, you can do it yourself. So I find, and this is not to down financial advisors, but I feel like even if you're going to pay a financial advisor to give you advice, you still need to understand how these things work and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where I come in. I'm sort of a financial educator, a financial coach. I work with my clients to figure out what it is that they want to do. And then we map out what they need to do in their finances to get there. Mm-hmm. So that's more of the lane that I am in, because I really believe in women being empowered to make those decisions for themselves and not being reliant on someone else to tell them this is what you need to do.
Exactly. I agree with that. So other women who want to do like you and live abroad and they just want to be able to downsize their life, and what does that look like to downsize my life financially?
Some of it is women who want to, excuse me, my charger keeps coming out of the wall, who want to retire early, and they're trying to figure out, okay, what are the moves I need to make? Because we're told you need to save money. You need to save for retirement. But for the longest, nobody ever talked about what that meant. What did that look like? How do you do that? Mm-hmm. So I help women with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so yeah, you hear those messages now, and I'm one of those. I'm in a certain age, a woman of a certain age, I like to say. And for me, because I haven't worked a consistent full-time job in almost 10 years. And I think God just planned it that way. I always wanted to go back to work, but he's always blessed me with part-time opportunities. But because I haven't worked full-time jobs, I haven't had the traditional saving plans like people with the matching IRA. So I've had to save on my own. And so I am like, how they give you this is where you're supposed to be at this age. Mm-hmm. When I look at that, I go, what am I going to do?
Throw those numbers away,
and they said Social Security is going to be gone. Everybody's like, there's no Social Security for you. You will have no Social Security.
First, throw those numbers away, because I'm like, what is that based on? If you're trying to figure out how much money do you need when you retire, the secret to the answer to that is, what are your expenses? That's what's going to dictate how much money you need. Everybody does not need $1 million. I don't care what Susie Orman says. You don't need $1 million necessarily to retire if your expenses are not that high. And so this is why we see a lot of Americans leave the United States, because the retirement that they can afford outside the United States versus the retirement they can, I mean, I'm a prime example. I would not be retired at 45, almost 46 in the United States.
Oh, so that's where the community is. People are leaving the country because it's less, the cost of living is cheaper.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And so how much you need is really going to depend on your expenses. Like in your retirement, would you be expecting to, pay for people's college? Would you be having to pay a mortgage? Like how often are you going to replace your cars? Okay. Or you do like I did and you retire to a place that has mass transit and you don't have to own a car and it's very walkable. So it's really about, what is it going to cost you to live the life you want, to get a rough, now there are a bunch of different calculators, but basically 25 times what that number is, that's how much you will need. But here's the other thing. A lot of times we think about, like, I need $1 million or I need $2 million in my savings to retire. But that money's not going to be sitting around in cash. That money should be invested and continuing to grow. So, because if this is my biggest pet peeve, is that we're always told to save. We're never told to invest, and saving is not going to get it. Saving money, you are going to actually, if you're saving money, lots of money for long term, you're actually losing money because you're not going to beat inflation.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're learning that, and that my last guest talked about that. That's why she was on, to show us how to start doing that investment.
Yeah, saving is not enough.
Accounts, those money market funds, they're the bonds gone. Those things are the things of the past.
That's for short term. Saving is for short term.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to need to replace the refrigerator and the other appliances in the next 3 years. That's savings. But if you're talking about money for retirement, it has to be invested. You can't save enough to do that.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And so that's where to build that up too, for somebody like me who I'm not working for at a company, I really have to accelerate my long-term investment plan, because I'm 56. So I don't have a problem telling you. I just turned 56 earlier this month. So I have 10 years. But who says I even want to work that long? So I may have to. I was thinking about moving to Florida. I may have to consider moving down to South America or somewhere else now. At least I have warm weather.
But that's why that's why I laughed when you said earlier about people going to Mexico, or heck, people go to Canada to get cheaper medication.
That's true.
And that, like, the largest group of people in Mexico who are not here with proper paperwork are Americans.
And they're living in Mexico?
Yes. In Mexico doesn't call them illegal. They're irregular. But their immigration status is irregular, but the largest group of people here, it's Americans.
But they have money coming. Their money is where? Yeah. Where's their money?
Their money's in the U.S. You can live outside the United States and still get your Social Security, your SSI.
And put your money in the bank accounts and everything.
And you just go to the ATM and pull out what you need.
And convert it and everything else. But the money goes further down, pesos, for living. So housing and just the basics of stuff.
And this is why a lot of Americans are moving to Portugal.
Now they're moving to Portugal too.
Yeah, I think in order to get a D7 visa in Portugal, It's basically a non-lucrative visa, like you have some source of money outside of Portugal. I think you have to show an income of 7,000 euros a year.
What is that in American?
It's more than that.
Is it more than that?
Yeah, it's more. Mhm.
Okay.
Well, what does that translate to American dollars? No, actually, pull out my
A
calculator.
euro is
Is more
about
than a
20%
dollar.
more than a dollar. So if we're talking 100 euros, that's 120 USD.
So 100 euros give you 120 United States dollars. That's still
Yeah.
good. It's still
No,
yeah.
if you want to be in Europe and as part of a D7 visa, you get to be on their health system eventually.
Yeah, that's the move. That is definitely
That's
So
the
eventually
move.
If you're trying to go into Europe, going through Portugal, that's the move. Portugal or Spain.
Yeah.
Those are the moves.
So say this. So if I want to be an expat, is that what it is? Expat.
Immigrant, expat, whatever.
So eventually I would, even though I'm not giving up my American citizenship, I can still eventually, after I go through whatever red tape they ask you to, I can still get some of their benefits from their country.
Yes.
Wow.
In
You
Portugal.
are considered a resident, and as a resident, you qualify for everything that a local receives.
And
if you even want, you can have dual citizenship.
If you want to buy,
you can keep your American citizenship, and then after X amount of years of residency there, you can then get a Portugal citizenship.
As a resident of Portugal, eventually you will qualify to be on their socialized medicine. But let's say you want private insurance, we're talking about less than $100 a year.
A month. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yes.
You know,
I mean, even in
lost our mind over here. My
Mexico, it's like
sucks.
what, $50 a month? If
I don't even want to tell
Yeah.
you. Oh God.
Because I have residency in Mexico. So I don't have citizenship. I will qualify in 3 years. I don't know that I'm going to do it because it's going to complicate my tax situation. And I like things to be very simple. But having residency, permanent residency versus being a Mexican citizen, the only thing I can't do is vote.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot legally attend a protest.
Okay, I don't think you'd be that upset about that.
No, no, I'm not broken up about that at all. So yeah.
So that was one of the questions too. One of them said, do you have to apply for residency? You guys answered that. I hope that answered your question, Ann. I'm trying to look at the question. So do you have to apply for residency? Do you have to apply for residency?
If you want to be legal, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
In Mexico,
You should.
there are definitely ways around it.
Here's the thing. If there are a lot of people, especially people who are digital nomads,
Yeah.
and what a lot of them do is instead of applying for residency, they string together a series of tourist visas because the American passport, I think we got like 158 countries that we could go to where we didn't need a visa.
Right.
And so if you're only staying in a country for 3 months or less, you come in on a tourist visa and you go to the next. That's not what tourist visas are intended for, but that is how they are being used. Now, in light of the pandemic, we are seeing more governments trying to come up with visas specifically for those people. But they are coming with income requirements, and some of them are steep, some of them are very low. So like Lisa said, if you want to do it the legal way, you should get a residency visa. Okay. But there are plenty of people who don't. But here's the catch. Like in Mexico, for example, typically an American will get a 6-month tourist visa. You get 180 days, but that is at the discretion of the immigration officer. They could give you 2 weeks. Okay. You know, so by having residency, as long as I don't do anything illegal, there is no reason for Mexico to ever tell me, no, you can't be here. Okay.
Wow. You guys opened up. Lisa told me, but you guys, I love y'all. Y'all are just really opening up. There's a bunch of us women who are living and traveling outside the United States. And for now, I thought it was just travel. there's benefits to this. There's benefits
Oh, yeah.
to
Fraction.
us.
It's a fraction of the cost. A
It's cheaper to
fraction.
live in
Mhm.
other countries than it is here to retire. And that's been the biggest thing now. And now, because of the epidemic, a lot, you told them digital nomad, people are working remotely. I
Mhm.
know people are flocking to Florida because that's where I was looking. I know, I'm pretty sure people are flocking to other parts of the world because they can do that and still work remotely.
Yeah, that's when I was explaining to you the whole thing about the difference between working remote and having location independence. That's why I said I would consider going back to work only if I can have location independence. That means you can work from anywhere in the world that you want. Whereas remote working, there are restrictions.
Okay. All right. What is it called again? So we can, for those in the back, we'll say it again. It's called
Location independence.
location independence. So that's what I'm going to ask for when people hire me. Would you like remote work?
Yes.
I'm like, I want location independence. Thank you very much.
I interviewed a mom a couple weeks ago on my YouTube channel. She told the people at her job that she sold her house and that she was just going to be a nomad for a little bit. And they were like, "Oh, that's cool. That's great. That's really cool." They didn't ask where she was going. And so she didn't volunteer where she was going.
So she's working remotely.
Yeah, because she had been working remotely because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But she had decided that, she wanted to live outside the United States. And she is technically a nomad. She's just doing her nomading in Mexico. But some employers will be like, no, you have to work either in this state or in the US.
Yeah.
Some will not care. So that's, she checked the employee handbook to make sure, and then she just only volunteered. She didn't volunteer any extra information.
I agree. I would have done the same thing. Actually, I know some people who are doing that. They moved out of state too in the pandemic. They didn't ask no questions. I'll tell you no lies. That's the attitude they have. And
they have to be careful when they do that, because if they get caught, whatever, there are tax implications. Because depending on where you work, your employer has to pay certain types of taxes.
And depending on the country.
There has to be, and if you're working overseas, there has to be some sort of tax agreement with that country. So like I said, there's reasons why employers do not want people to work from certain locations, because there are very steep tax implications on the company.
Well, then they should just issue 1099s and leave it at that. Let people pay their own. Let people pay their own taxes, but still give them health insurance.
I have heard several people who have approached their employer with this plan of, I want to be outside the United States. And it was like, okay, they would agree to it, but they were going to maybe reduce their compensation or maybe switch them from W-2 to 1099. So, it's about what's more important to you, if that's the situation you find yourself in.
Wow. Okay. Well, you guys gave so much information. Do I have any other questions in the chat? Let me just check as we get ready to wind this down. Any other questions before we wind down? I am like, I'm still trying to process all this stuff. Adalia, you were just so amazing. I guess you were a free spirit by nature. I assume that was how you would.
I don't know. I have been called that in the last 6 years, and that is not how I would have described myself before. But, I basically spent 20 years pretending to be somebody else. So I don't know.
And that's, all the information you gave to me, I'll be honest with you, the golden nugget for me, and I don't know about you guys, is the fact that she shared a story, for those who came off late, that she lived a life that she was not happy with. She was joyless. How many of us have been in situations, relationships, jobs, friendships, churches, responsibilities, leadership roles, that we're not happy and we stay? And we talked about self-sacrificing. We talked about, because we do that, we're not getting any younger. Every day that you live not living your best life is a day that you'll never get back. Never get back. You will never get back. Now, Christina, you're in a different situation. You are definitely a caregiver right now, but let me just encourage you.
Seasonal.
This is just a season. And that's how you have to look at it. So keep that dream of going to Italy in your mind. And until you get to Italy, I think there's things you can do to connect you to Italy.
Oh, yeah.
There's an Italian embassy in DC. Go down to the embassy. I think off the top of it. Go down to the Italian embassy and connect down there. They have programs. Maybe you can volunteer. I don't know. Meet the consulate and say, listen, I want to go to your country. What can you do for me? I don't know. But connect to Italy in some way. Take an Italian cooking class. Take Italian language. Go online. There's a free connect, because even if you can't do, and I'm talking to you guys too, even if you can't do what Adalia and Lisa's doing right now, you can do the steps to get there. Any suggestions on learning about that? Throw those nuggets in there right now, Adalia. One of them is Nomad Tribe on Facebook. There's a travel group called Nomad. What is it, Lisa? Nomad?
Nomadness.
Nomadness. Get connected to group travel on Facebook. There's a lot of group travel. Adelia, what were you going to say?
I would say
plug your stuff, Adelia.
Go ahead, Adelia.
Well, because I was gonna say that really, if you're interested in travel or specifically living in another country, Facebook has been incredibly valuable. Getting into the different expat groups to ask your questions. The expat groups for specific cities. I have a Facebook group for women who travel solo, because that's an area of mine, because it breaks my heart. I'll be in a group like Nomadness or one of the other big travel groups where someone will say, like, my friends have canceled, or I can't get my husband to go, or I can't get my girlfriend to go. And, I'm afraid. Like I said, I don't deal with fear. Not to say that I am not afraid sometimes. I just don't let that stop me from doing the thing that I want to do. So I have a Facebook group called Solo Sisters for that. But I would definitely say,
Solo Sisters, join it.
If you are interested, find an expat group for the country you're interested in, and then maybe drill down to the city. So like I didn't start this group from Mexico City, but I am one of the admins because the person who created the group is getting ready to move to Panama. So like I'm in some Mexico country groups, but then I'm also in some Mexico City specific groups. Then I'm in some women in Mexico kind of groups, women in Mexico City groups. If you want to ask questions, you want to connect with people who are on the ground, you're trying to figure out, is this someplace I want to be? Facebook has been a really, really a good tool for that.
Thank you for that. Also, she's a financial coach. So if retiring early, you may not want to go overseas, but maybe you want to retire early. Contact Adelia, tell her about your coaching and your website.
I do. I am getting ready actually to launch a group coaching program. It's a financial confidence boot camp. What I find is that a lot of the different coaching goes on for like 8 weeks, 12 weeks. And I'm like, no, I think you can learn what you need to learn in 4 weeks. So that's why I call it a boot camp. And it kind of covers all of the things you wish you had learned about money, but you never did. And at the end of it, you will have the financial confidence to invest, to be able to create the budget you need, to understand, what is your money personality and how to adjust for that so that you can achieve your financial goals. I can't tell y'all how many courses I have signed up for and bought, but then never went back to because so I purposely designed it to be, it's not like you just go and you're on your own. We have weekly calls, but again, it's short, it's 4 weeks. That way I feel like people are less inclined kind of to get lost or let life get in the way, that sort of thing. I also do one-on-one consulting on finances, on moving abroad. And if anybody is interested in teaching at international schools, I don't teach anymore, but I can, if that's something somebody is interested in doing,
I am.
they can schedule a one-on-one call with me. And you can find out all of that stuff on my website, pickygirltravelstheworld.com. And if y'all are wondering, like, that's an odd name for a company, that's because I am a very, very picky eater. Like, no fruits, no vegetables my entire life. And I used to travel the world before the pandemic. And so that's where that name comes from. But in essence, I think I've become just picky about everything. I'm picky about how I spend my time, who I spend my time with, that sort of thing.
That's called intentional.
Yeah.
It's called, you can call it picky too, but it's intentional.
I am intentional.
And you're very intentional because your time is you try to savor that space.
Yes, ma'am.
Protect that space. I love it. I love it. I love it. One other question was, did you speak Spanish before moving to Mexico?
No. When I moved to Honduras, I thought, well, I grew up in Houston, people, because I took Latin and French in school. And I was like, hola, I know some numbers. I got to Honduras and was like, whoa, I don't know anything. So, and I thought I would learn in like 6 months, because when I would get kids from Latin America in my classroom, they would learn English in 6 months. Well, my old brain did not do that. A year in Honduras, the best I had was grocery store Spanish. Like, I could identify foods, the ones I don't eat, because that's always the first thing I learn how to say in a language is I don't want that, or no vegetables. So in Mexico, I got there and I didn't really know Spanish. I think I took an intensive class at the university, which was good for me because the teacher would not allow us to speak in English. Like, I did a 2 or 3 week class at like a regular language school, but when I would ask a question, I'd ask it in English. And at the university, I didn't know this until I moved to Mexico City. There's a large Asian population. And so a lot of people come from China and South Korea to learn Spanish in Mexico City.
Wow.
And so I was the only person in the class who only spoke one language. And the teacher was like, no, we won't speak in English. This person from China doesn't speak English. So I had to speak in Spanish. I saw a lot of improvement. Since I moved back in July, I have a private teacher, and I don't know how to classify my Spanish now. I get by. It is painful. I usually say I speak Spanish like a drunken toddler. I get by. I manage. I preface everything I say in Spanish. I always start with, I'm sorry, my Spanish is not very good. Can you speak slowly? And then we kind of stumble through there. I have found that in Mexico, people are very willing to work with you. That is the absolute opposite of China. They would just stare at me in China. So I gave up trying. I went to China with 3 words of Mandarin and I left with 4. I learned how to say to go, to how to ask for food to go.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Adalia. You have been the most gracious guest we've had.
Aww.
You did so many great tidbits.
Yes.
I always try to sum it up. Basically, we heard about self-sacrificing and living our best life now, what it's like to live, the benefits of living overseas. It's not just travel. There's benefits for those of us, especially single women who are not married and you're getting closer to retirement age. And you have to think about, okay, how am I going to spend the rest of my life without maybe a financial partner? Or even if you are married, what your options are. We always think about retirement. I know I did to Florida, but you have opened my eyes. Now I just got to convince my husband. That's going to be a hard sell, going to another country. But I'm all down for that. And how to live in a way to honor yourself financially to live your dreams, whatever that looks like. But we know that it looks like you have to spend down your debt, reduce your debt, and live offer a certain amount of money if you increase your savings. So we did talk about that a little bit. Is
I'd
there
also add to avoid lifestyle creep. When people get promotions, when they get bonuses, the instinct is to buy better, buy more things, buy more expensive things. If
That's
you
50
can, yeah, if you can keep your lifestyle in check, and as your pay goes up, it makes increasing that savings rate that much easier.
to live off what you lived with before you get the increase.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Can I just do a quick thing that we just did this past week that saved us over $700 a month? If people haven't done it, we refinanced our house and we got our mortgage down from $1,900 to $1,100 a month.
There
Yay!
you go.
And that was just one thing,
Yeah, there's a lot of things you could do. Get rid of cable. I can tell you that, and get Netflix. It's a lot cheaper. All right, Adelia, I'm going to ask you one question before we leave. These are what would you rather questions. Would you rather be a beautiful person but stupid, or intelligent but ugly?
Are we talking physical beauty?
I don't know. They didn't specify. Would you rather be? Would you rather be?
Because if we're
beautiful?
talking physical beauty,
Yes,
I
physical
would
beauty.
rather not be stupid.
Okay, so it's either would you rather be beautiful and stupid, or intelligent and ugly?
Intelligent and ugly.
Okay. I like to ask these questions to make people think like, what? Intelligent and ugly. Okay. And the reason why?
Dumb people get taken advantage of in life, and I can't be that person.
Okay. That's all we had to hear.
Plus, beauty fades.
Yeah, beauty is a bad
fades.
investment.
Intelligence will stay with you as long as you got the mind.
Okay. Thank you so much. Anybody else have any questions? Anything in there? I'm looking in the chat. I don't see anything. Listen, I go to her website, Picky Girls. Let me make sure it's right. I'm gonna put it in the chat.
PickyGirlTravelsTheWorld.com.
Lisa, put that in the chat too for me. Lisa, you became a co-host.
Oh, okay, hold on. I'm not a social media person. It's gonna take me like 10 minutes to do that.
No, it's not. You just put her Facebook group in there. So,
I did, but I did that like a while ago. It took me a minute to do that.
okay, so could you put her website in the group chat for everybody, please?
All right, I'll do that.
Oh, thank you guys. I on behalf of the survivors, strivers, and they're all saying thank you. So when you get a chance to see it, on behalf of survivors, strivers, and thrivers, we thank you. We're honored to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Come back again. You gave us some great tips. Blessings to you. Continued success to you and your family. Happy travels. And you'll definitely be hearing from me for sure.
Okay.
And I'm glad.
All right. Well, I enjoyed this, guys. I really did.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Most
Good
welcome.
to see you again. And Lisa, thank you for introducing me to a wonderful spirit. Girl, I owe you.
Very welcome.
Thank you all. Have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right.
And Amelia, I'll send you this link.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Good night. Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Night, y'all.
Bye.